First of all, I'd like to say that I am humbled to follow these stories of incredible service with my story about my first trip to India. But that is what I would like to tell you. In case you can't tell from my accent, I am American, and I am from New York. And I have always wanted to visit India. But I realized the minute I landed here in Ahmedabad to go to a retreat called Gandhi 3.0, that somehow I had the idea that I would go and have an adventure and still be a kind of observer, that I wouldn't actually have to take part in anything. I could just come here and then go back to my cozy house in New York and think about what I'd seen. But the first thing I discovered is that you can't visit India without having it touch you. Literally, I mean this literally. When I was online for the plane in New York, an Indian woman behind me said, "Be prepared to get touched," because people don't give you enormous amounts of space like we're conditioned to have in New York. After my long flight, I was met at the gates of the retreat center with this love. People holding up smile buttons and singing and hugging and greeting me. And I was actually very touched by it, but I was told days later that I looked so terrified that after that, they decided to change the policy, to tone it down, because I looked like I was being mugged by love. So day by day, I had to learn to receive what was constantly being given to me. And I felt so vulnerable and so awkward, the way people do when they're visiting another country for the first time. I didn't know the language. I didn't have the right clothes because New York was all snowed in, so I couldn't go shopping. So things would appear for me. As a matter of fact, I was relieved to see the poisonous snakes because I brought sneakers because I was afraid of snakes. Because my husband had researched the Ahmedabad retreat center, ashram, and at one point there were a lot of snakes, and Gandhi didn't want to have them killed, so I had these snake-repellent shoes, which were totally wrong. So these sandals showed up. And I didn't have a towel because in America you don't have to pack a towel. A towel appeared. Still this shyness, this awkwardness. For example, I took cold showers because I was too shy to say, is the water supposed to be hot? So I just took a cold shower because I came from a culture and a conditioning of self-sufficiency where you don't really call attention to yourself unless perhaps you're on fire. And and then maybe, but still the love came and the gifts came and the acceptance of me came. Complete acceptance of me just as I was. And I came here, I realized after I got here, knowing nothing about the people that I would be meeting. For example, one man whose name I finally learned, Jayesh Bhai, Jayesh Bhai, Jayesh Bhai. I didn't know his name and I didn't know how to pronounce it, but this was the gift of not knowing. There was a special quality that I could pick out in this one man. In one of the apartments that I've stayed here, I didn't even know I was coming here, but here I am. And I was staying in an apartment, and someone gave me a Rumi poem called The Guest House. And it says, the first line, "This being human is a guest house, each day a new arrival." So with this mysterious man, I felt that quality. I didn't speak his language. and he didn't speak mine. I know he understands it, but he chooses not to speak it so much. But what I felt in his presence was complete equanimity and love and acceptance. It didn't matter who I was, if I was from America, if I was an old friend, if I was a newcomer, there was this quality. So day by day by day, this gift kept being given, this acceptance, this love. So after the retreat ends, the zany fun really begins, because I'm invited to go on a pilgrimage to a Vinoba ashram and a Gandhi ashram. And the pilgrimage, on the way, we stop to see a sunset. Who does that? You stop. First of all, I am still recovering from the trauma of driving in this country. And then to just stop to see this perfect sunset. And we stop and have chai. And I'm slowly getting a lesson about what it is to give and receive. After staying at the Vinoba ashram with these wonderful women who have dedicated their lives to receiving this truth. And I begin to understand that what Gandhi was bringing to the world was a truth that can't be thought. It was the truth of being in a new kind of alignment. So I had one day in a village, one day in an Indian village, and I learned a village is not just a small town without electricity. I went into this village, and a woman who had almost nothing offered me bread. And I began to learn what Gandhi meant by being rooted in this experience. Just as I've slowly learned from my friends who invited me here in this community, why these small acts of kindness are so important. So I'm feeling carried. I'm carried literally day by day. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where I'm going to stay. And I have to open to receive that. And it reminds me of an experience I had, and my noble friend Nipun likes it. I'm not going to tell the story, except for this. Many years ago in New York, in the 80s in New York City, I had a traumatic mishap, and I had a near-death experience. I was close to death, or I was dead, briefly. And in the midst of that experience, I witnessed, like a classic near-death experience, this beautiful luminous light behind the appearances of this world. And I saw that when I left my body, which I did briefly, when all of us do, I believe, will join a light of truth that is not a thought. It's a light that's an energy, a vibration that's in us and that surrounds us and that supports this entire world. And that in that light, at that subtle level, there's no separation between any of us. There is no such thing as American or Indian or any separation whatsoever. So I felt held and carried by this light. And I had to return to my body. And I had the feeling that we're given these bodies and these lives for a purpose. And I wasn't given explicit directions like some people are when they write best-selling books about these experiences. But what I have learned is that what we're meant to do is be a channel for this light. And that service is opening to receive it and daring to let it shine. And I learned coming to India that these small acts of kindness, this offering of bread, is a way to practice opening to that light, in addition to all this great service that we've heard about. And I learned that there is no act too small. Because sometimes the bravest thing we can do is give each other our attention, our presence. The bravest and most daring thing we can do is have an intention to live another way. So, earlier in this week, I can't even tell how long I've been here, 2 weeks, 2 months. Because I have to tell you, there is a quality of going down the rabbit hole into Alice in Wonderland. When you start living this way, I just want to warn any newcomers here that life changes, and in a physical way, but this is how it changes. We leave the ashram, a group of us, and we're going to fly here. So we hit a traffic jam. The traffic jam is like an hour. And it's not a traffic jam like I'm familiar with in New York. It's a traffic jam. People do not follow the rules in this country. Not the driving rules. So finally we decide we're going to jump out of the car and we're going to walk to the airport. So we're carrying our luggage and we're walking on the highway and people are staring at us. And finally we get stopped by a policeman, and Nipun explains that with a smile, naturally, that we have to make this flight. So the policeman stops traffic. He stops traffic. So eventually a bus full of some kind of service people stop and let us get on. They offer me a special seat. I keep trying to picture this happening on the way to JFK Airport, and I just can't get there. So it invites us, and I emailed my husband, who's like, "Where are you in India?" And I told him I just had this wonderful experience walking down the highway with my luggage. You know, you have to be there in the moment with an open heart, because this light of the divine doesn't care about what's up here. I don't think it cares about what's in here. It cares about our opening to receive a finer energy. So I just want to say that earlier, a couple of days ago, Nipun quoted Oscar Wilde, a great English wit, saying, "People know the price of everything, but the value of nothing." In this great gentle movement, this revolution that he's kicking off, where we can receive the value of things, Oscar Wilde also said, "Anything is precious if you take the trouble to hide it." And precious in a bad sense. He meant, like, after I had that experience on the streets in Manhattan, I didn't know what to do with it. I thought it was precious, like a precious jewel, so I hid it away. So I come to India and I find out that it's not precious, it's ordinary, like bread is ordinary. It's essential. Like water is essential and ordinary. And the purpose of these experiences and these small acts of kindness is to share them, not to keep them. The old English root of the word to heal means to come to wholeness. To come to wholeness. And I feel that that's what I experienced here in India. And you know, working for Parabola, it's a magazine for all the world's great traditions. I've always regarded myself as a seeker of truth, but now I feel like I was always kind of reading the menu without eating the food. I deeply feel that not only is India our sacred past, I believe it's the future. This village. And I intend to take it back to the village of Manhattan, this way of being. Thank you very much for listening.